now after spending the morning kind of giving you some foundational pieces, we're ready to actually get into using the system. Say yay! Yay! So we're going to get some more into some goal-setting techniques that you can actually practice, and then into using the system itself. So I think we'll just leap right into this. We talked earlier on this morning about how important it is to know where you're going, and especially to be able to know that 3-year point, right? And at least have the sense of direction, and about breaking it down into smaller steps, and how important and how effective that is. So basically what we're talking is about goal setting. Now, one of the things that's different about ProCoach than any other system that I've ever met, any other coaching program, is by and large, ProCoach is not a goal-setting system. It's a goal-achieving system. But before you can achieve goals, what do you got to do? You got to set them. Okay. So we're going to talk a little about the goal-setting process before we get into the methodology for achieving them. And I will assure you this: the more effectively you set your goals, the better the results will be in terms of the forward movement to you achieving them. So it's really a crucial element of the program. So. Some of you may have heard of what's called a SMART goal. Anybody heard that before? Oh, only 1 or 2 people. Okay. So let's talk about this. This is one piece of goal-setting methodology, if you want to call it that. A SMART goal. So, when you're setting your goals for yourself, the very first thing you want to do is make sure, this is an acronym, right? Obviously, beginning of the first letter of each word. You want to make sure that your goals are specific. Anybody know what the M stands for?
Measurable.
Measurable, right? Now, these two kind of go together, but basically we're saying, if I was to set myself a goal of, I want to eat more healthily. Okay, so beginning of the week, I sit down and say, this week I'm going to eat more healthily. Okay, then at the end of the week, I go back to see how I did. It's really hard to know, exactly what I meant by that. So did I eat more healthily if I ate 1 molecule less fat, or worked out 1 more time in the week? Was that being more healthy? You know what I'm saying? So, so my mind doesn't give me a win out of it. Basically, we talked early on about confidence and how you need to impress yourself, and how when you, the way to increase your confidence is to impress yourself, right? And we also talked about momentum and how to generate momentum for yourself. Having specific measurable goals and then achieving them allows you to get a pat on the back for doing them. If they're not specific and measurable, if it's a I want to eat more healthily goal, at the end of the week you don't really know whether you did it or not, you don't get the energy from it, you don't get the hit. So what happens, let's say that throughout the week I eat, instead of typically my 5 desserts in a week that I normally have, and a bunch of sugar, cookies, and cakes or whatever throughout the week, I eat a couple more salads, and I only have dessert twice, but then on Friday night I kind of binge out and I have 2 pieces of pie with ice cream. Pie's my favorite, by the way. So at the end of the week, when I go to write down and give myself a pat on the back for eating more healthily, am I going to get the big check mark?
Yes.
Well, yes, the truth is I did eat more healthily, but what's my mind saying to me? Yeah, but...
I had perfect.
What is it, Leona?
You weren't perfect.
Well, what about the pie?
Yeah.
Right? Yes, you ate more healthily, but... Can anybody relate to what I'm talking about here? Right? So the bottom line is that your mind is not your friend. Your mind does not want you to get the win. It actually is trying to undermine you. So when you set a goal that's specific and measurable, the purpose of it really is to set it up so that your mind can't take it away from you. So it's so specific. I will eat a maximum of 1 helping of dessert 3 times this week, and avoid all other sugary sweets. Or whatever it is, right? So set it up so specifically and measurably so that an outside person could look at. I call it the Judge Judy test. Everybody know who Judge Judy is, right? The daytime TV. You guys are watching way too much daytime TV. But people come in front of her and she listens to the story on both sides and she goes, "Bang! This person wins." Well, what I want is that you set your goals up so that if Judge Judy was to look at your results, she would be able, and you told her what your goal was, she saw what you did, she'd be able to go, bang, you win. Or bang, you didn't. It's clear, black and white, rather than vague. Because if it's vague, your mind won't give you the win. You don't get that little bit of boost of energy and confidence that comes with achieving it. Make sense? So that's the first one. Now, now we're talking about what I call autonomous. So, what does autonomous mean?
By yourself.
By yourself. So, in other words, to set an autonomous goal, if I set a goal, Leona, if I set my goal this week to meet with Leona for lunch, she doesn't know about this goal yet, then what if I phone her and she goes, I'm out of town this week? Or, I don't feel like meeting with you. Or whatever it is. Basically, I've set myself up to fail by setting a goal which somebody else has control over, somebody else can glitch. Now, you don't need to get totally carried away, right? So, for example, I'm going to set a goal to work out 3 times this week. Well, what if the gym's closed or something, right? But as best as possible, set it to something within your control so nobody else can kind of take it away. And this is, by the way, one of the reasons that you don't ever want to set a goal of creating a certain number of sales or anything like that involves somebody else saying yes or agreeing to what you're going to do. My goal this week is to go to Victoria and hang out with my dad. Well, what if my dad doesn't want it? So you definitely you want to have it autonomous. The fourth piece, realistic. Now, I talked earlier on today about the fact that, in my experience, the number one reason that people don't achieve their goals is why? Unrealistic expectations, right? So we're talking about setting something that's achievable. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but basically, there is no penalty for overachieving your goal. So if I say I'm going to go to the gym twice this week, and I go 3 times, does that hurt me? Heck no, I get a big pat on the back for going the extra time. But if I say I'm going to go 3 times, and I only go twice, then what happens? Beat myself up. So better off to set something that's realistic, and there's no penalty for overachieving, is what I say. But there's a big penalty that you pay in terms of your own momentum and success if you underachieve and you set a goal and don't accomplish it. And the last one is it's got a time associated. It actually has a deadline on it, so we know by when, and that's part of the specificity as well. You say, well, I'm only going to eat dessert 3 times. In what time frame? Right? So over what period? So by putting a date on it, even to the point where saying by midnight Monday. Or not just, on Monday or whatever, but the more specificity, the whole goal here is to set it up so that you can win, because every time you win, it makes a little tiny shift at a cellular level, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise your belief in yourself, your confidence, your expectation of what you're going to accomplish, so you transform and achieve more and more. Make sense? In addition to setting goals with the SMART criteria, there's another technique I've learned for setting goals which I find crucially helpful when it comes to getting you into action in ProCoach. So basically, let me see. Let's give you a goal of, do we have this on the second page? By Jove, we do. Let's talk about a goal of losing 5 pounds. Okay, my goal is to lose 5 pounds this quarter. Anybody have some thought along those lines, right? My goal is to earn a certain amount of money. I've got a goal to earn, an X amount of money this year, right? So here's what I notice about those kind of goals. They're all based on what I would call. They're all a result. They're all an outcome. And there is a completely different way, a reverse way of setting a goal. Instead of setting it based on a result, to set it based on an action. So if my goal for this quarter was 5 pounds, well, how could I state that in terms of actions?
Eat 1 healthy meal a day.
Okay, eat 1 healthy meal a day. Okay, so 1 healthy meal.
Work out 3 times a week.
Okay, work out 3 times a week, yes? So we're talking about, and by the way, we have to, eating one healthy meal a day help you lose 5 pounds? We don't know. It depends on you and how you're going to do it. But you have to make sure that the actions are going to actually lead to that result, if that's the result that you want. So it could be work out 3 times a week. What else?
Hire a personal trainer.
Hire a personal trainer. That's an action that's going to probably get you to the gym, but it's very different than just losing the 5 pounds. Okay, how about, let's say I'm going to earn $40,000 in commissions this month or whatever. I have $40,000 in sales this month. Okay, so $40,000 in sales. That's an outcome. What are some actions you might take?
No sleeping.
Not sleeping for a month, right?
Making sales calls.
So make 5 calls. Or whatever, but the point is that it's actions that lead to results, right? And so when you present your goals in terms of actions, we automatically know if you follow through and do those actions, if the goals are set well, they will lead to the results. When you set a result as a goal, then you don't really know quite where to start. So, for example, I'll hire a new person for my staff this quarter. Result or action? Well, it's a fine line, but think of it in terms of what are you going to have to do to get that person on board, and the more you break it down into the specific actions. So if my desired outcome is to have a new person on the team, then the actions are going to be to identify the job description, to run the ad, to do the interviews, to do and to get them on board. When you break it down into steps like that, it becomes much easier for you to look at your goals and go, oh, now I see what I need to do next. If you look at the result, oftentimes it's like, oh, that's a great result, but what do I do next? Now, neither one of these is right or wrong, better or worse than the other, but here's been my experience is the shorter term the goal is, the more useful it is to set it in terms of actions rather than results. So if I'm setting a goal for the week, really useful to set it. And by the way, there's not a clear distinction. If I say, finish my business plan this week, is that an action or a result? Yeah, we can't even really tell which it is when it starts to get that short, right? So, but by and large, setting shorter-term goals, let's say weekly, even your quarterly actions, in terms of actions rather than results, I find more useful because it helps you get into action. And we talked in the blueprint about the single biggest thing that stops people becoming as successful as they want is that when they hit that place where they have to transition from an idea in their head, from a plan, through to action, right, to get through the transition zone. So when you put it in terms of actions, it automatically takes you through the transition onto the other side. Did you have a question?
Those actions could also be like mini goals, right?
Yes, they are mini goals in a way of putting it. Absolutely. So like I said, we're not black and white. We're not saying this is a goal and or whatever. But what I'm saying is when you write down the things that you want to achieve in terms of the actions necessary to do them, and you do those actions, it becomes much easier for you to follow through and do what you need to do than if you put them out here. And especially the bigger the goal, the more likely it is to overwhelm you, and it's much more useful to break it down to small steps that are going to get you there. We talked earlier on about the biggest problem I think that stops people from achieving the goals they set out for themselves, which is unrealistic expectations, right? So let me just check in with you. How many of you have ever set a goal for yourself and not achieved it? Just checking whether there was any either liars or angels in the audience, one or the other. Most of us, right? So how many do that quite regularly? This is not good for your success, but it's perfectly normal. So let's talk a little about that. So this is a piece of information, a model that I learned again from the strategic coach Dan Sullivan. And basically says that when you set out to set a goal, or achieve a goal, you basically have where you are now, your starting place, and you have your vision, your ideal, the picture of where you want to go, the finished goal, right? So let's call it the vision of the thing finished. And then, let's use an example. Okay, let's talk about money's always a good thing to talk about, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, let's say that you are currently earning, I don't know, $40,000 a year, for the sake of argument. What would be a realistic goal for, let's say you earned $40,000 in 2008, what would be a realistic goal for 2009? Like aggressive, but possible, achievable. I mean, you don't know exactly. Let's make up a number.
60.
60, anyone else? More?
That's a 50% increase, right?
50% increase? 60 is good for you? Okay. So we're going to set a goal for 60,000. Okay, now, imagine that you work your tail off. You really come in, you work away and you achieve a goal of 56,000. Okay? So Dan Sullivan would say you have a starting place, you have a vision, and then you get a result. Now, did you achieve your goal?
No.
No? So what do you say to yourself about that? You kind of little, banging, like you set a solid goal. And especially, let's say that you did what the goal-setting people tell us to do, which is to write it on a slip of paper, put it on the mirror, right? Read your goal card every day. I earn 60,000. I earn 60,000. I earn 60,000. I am a $60,000 income earner, right? So you guys following me, right? We reinforce and focus on the 60,000. How do we feel when we come up with only 56?
Failure.
We feel like a failure. And yet, what's the reality?
67,000 increase.
At 60. So here's the deal, and here's the learning: is this a good result or a bad result?
Good. It's a good result.
Well, the answer is actually it depends how you look at it, right? If you look at it in terms of how far you fell short of your goal, it's a bad result. Beat yourself up, didn't do it, didn't do good enough, all that kind of stuff. But if you look in terms of how far you came forward, it's a pretty, 40,000 to 56, that's pretty darn good. So what Dan says is that this is what he calls focusing on the gap, how far you've fallen short. And this one here is focusing on the progress that you've made, right? Now, which one serves you to get at a cellular level that you're increasing momentum, you're becoming a successful person, so on? Focus on?
Progress.
Focus on progress, right? So why is it we spend so much time and attention on how far we've fallen short? And it's because, again, that ego mind just won't let us win. It wants to take the win away, and plus we've had all this other conditioning around it has to be a big, hairy, audacious goal. In fact, if we didn't hit 60,000 next year, we should probably set 120 to really challenge ourselves, right? Which means even less likely we're going to accomplish it. We're setting ourselves up to fail with a lot of that methodology. So instead, we want to focus on progress, right? Now, here's my analogy. Some of you may have heard me say this before, but I've found that becoming successful is like starting a fire. So imagine you were out in the woods. Here we are, it's November, it's raining, and you were out in the woods in Mount Seymour, and you went for a hike on Sunday afternoon, and you got out in the woods, and it started to rain, and it's pouring rain, and suddenly you realize it's getting dark, and you're lost. And you're not going to find your way out of there. Like, you just can't seem to get out, and you realize that the only way that you're going to be successful in keeping yourself alive overnight is if you build yourself a fire. Okay? So, you pull out your box of matches, and you go to light a fire. Now, what do you look for? Do you look for like a bunch of big, wet, dripping logs, and you stick a match under there?
Yep, right.
Right? What do you do?
You look for the kindling.
You look under the leaves and stuff. You find a little bit of tinder, some really dry pieces, right? And you pile them up, and you put the match under there, and you watch the smoke come up. You protect it from the rain, right? Watch the smoke come up, and then poof, the flame comes, and you know you're going to be safe. And then what happens? You just put big wet logs on?
Mm-hmm.
No? What do you do?
Twigs, branches.
Twigs, branches, dry or wet?
Dry.
Dry as much as you can, and you build up the heat of the fire. And once the fire's got a little more heat in it, then you can put some wet twigs on, and the heat of the fire will dry them out, and then they'll burn, right? And isn't it true that if you take that approach within an hour or so, you could actually build a raging fire that would burn a big wet log. But if you start with that big wet log right away, you're just going to snuff the thing out. You with me? The same is true on your journey to success. When you first start out, at a cellular level, you have whatever expectation you have, and even just taking a little tiny step can be scary. It's a whole new game. You're not sure, all of that, and what happens for most people, though, they take this great big gigantic step, like putting a wet log on, and then they of course fall short. They don't achieve their goal, and what do they say to themselves? Bad, bad, bad. It's like pouring cold water on the fire. And I found if you just take small steps, every time you take a small step, it's like you have a success, and then every time you have a success, it adds fuel to the fire. The fire gets hotter. So I'll give you an example. I know I'm standing in front of an audience now. Imagine when I first started ProCoach 5 years ago. If I, imagine today. Okay, if I'd showed up here already to go, and not one person had come, nobody had showed up, how would I feel? I'd feel pretty hard, right? But do you think it would stop my business? Do you think it'd stop me dead in my tracks? No. There's something. It would be a bit of a setback, but I would get over it because I've got so much momentum and so much going on in other areas in my life. But imagine it was the very first ProCoach event I ever did. And I had invited all these people, had the room, and nobody showed. What would that do to me? I mean, that would really stop me. That would cause me to reconsider the whole business, wouldn't it? Right? So, fortunately, now I've got momentum. In fact, as I've been building and building, taking bigger and bigger and bigger steps, and I've got to the point where now I'm running as fast as I can, taking these giant leaps, looking over my shoulder, and I see this snowball running down, getting ready to run over me. I've created momentum, but it didn't start that way. It started out one small step at a time. So wherever you are, to accelerate your results, you want to take small steps first, and then bigger and bigger and bigger. Are you with me? Okay? And that's why it's so important to focus on the progress, catch yourself winning, rather than beating yourself up for falling short. Okay. Which brings us to the third methodology of goal setting. See, what I discovered when I was designing a system is that everybody was setting these big goals for themselves and not achieving them, and it didn't really work very well. And so I thought, well, how do we create a system where people can still have big goals, like want to achieve things, and yet they're not beating themselves up for falling short? And that's when I came up with this idea that would put an end to beating yourself up for not achieving your goals. Does that sound good? Okay, so here's how it goes. When you set a goal with ProCoach, in a number of cases in the quarterly folder and in your weekly, different places in ProCoach, we ask you set your goals in 3 different ways. A minimum goal, a target goal, and an extraordinary. So, a minimum goal is, we call this MTX. A minimum goal is a goal of which you have a 10 out of 10 chance of achieving it. Okay? So you say, now that doesn't mean it's a no-brainer. You have to put a little effort in, but you know for sure that it's totally achievable. Okay, so for me to say this week that I'm going to go to the gym 3 times, that's too much, because I know the week I have ahead. If I say 2 times as a minimum, I know for sure I can do it. That's a 10 out of 10. It's totally within my reach. Okay, so that's the minimum. The target is the one I'm shooting for. That's my little bit of a stretch goal. Okay, so that's where I could put 3 this week. So if this is 100% chance of achieving it, this one we want to be a probably 80 to 90% chance of achieving it. You with me? Now here's the cool part: is if you set an 80 target goal and you fall a little bit short, what happens? You've still accomplished your minimum because it was a 10 out of 10. Now, they don't necessarily need to be related. Let's say I say in my health and fitness area, my minimum is to go to the gym twice this week. My target may be to call a fitness trainer and find out about a program. So they don't have to necessarily be connected, but they could be. There's my minimum and my target. And extraordinary, this is one of the things that's different about ProCoach. Extraordinary is not me going to the gym 5 times or doing something incredible. An extraordinary is completely different. See, how many of you have ever discovered that you or found yourself so focused on a specific outcome or goal that you actually missed something that was coming at you that would help you achieve that? Just because if you had this tunnel vision. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Right? So an extraordinary goal is something, get this, beyond your control. So, my minimum is go to the gym at least twice. My target is to call my fitness trainer or go 3 times, whatever it is. My extraordinary is that somebody, a incredible fitness trainer in North Vancouver wants to do an exchange for joining our program. Now, do I have control over that? No, but it's a cool thing to invite in, isn't it? So one of the things I've been working on for some time is, for a long time I worked on my dream home, waterfront home in West Vancouver. Anybody else want that house? No, it's mine. Right? That was my dream. And my extraordinary was that until I could afford to build that, because I really I just have to build a business to be able to afford that, right? But in the meantime, my extraordinary was that somebody who has a home like that would take who knows me, would take a 1-year trip away and ask me to look after their home for them. I would allow that to come to me, would you? Right? So it's about opening up to what's possible for you rather than, this is not something you can do, but something you invite and receive. You with me? That's extraordinary. Questions or comments on that? You can't strive to reach your extraordinary. You've got to kind of allow it. Like, for example, anybody have a business that would benefit from some media coverage? Yeah, so you can do some things to help yourself get in the way of a media, but you can't ever control whether you get media coverage or not, right? So you can make it more likely, but your extraordinary might be that the business in Vancouver does a full-page write-up about your business. Yeah? So that would be an extraordinary. Okay, any questions again? Okay, good. So now we've finished the methodology.
Extraordinary. So would you actually set a goal for extraordinary, or are you just?
Yes, we would write it down. It's not a goal in terms of I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't get it. It's here's a cool thing that might happen, and I'm open to it. And if it doesn't happen, I can change it, reset it, or ask for the same one again, or do something different the next quarter. Okay? It's just about being open to what's possible.